Hey, it's Mr. Gaskill here with another episode of the Knudson Garden Update. And today we've got some really cool things happening in the garden with our three sisters' bed. So we're going to take a look at what's going on and talk about corn, squash, and beans. All right, so we're going to start with our first sister, which is our squash. This is a honeyboat squash, and it's doing really well. We planted this right at the beginning of the school year, and it has grown, and it is nice and mature. It's got big leaves, and we've got some flowers here. And I want you to notice these flowers aren't the same. This flower here has flower, but then there's this enlarged area, right? But if you compare that to this flower, it's got a stem, but no really enlarged area, okay? These are two different kinds of flowers. This is the female flower that's going to produce the squash, and this is the male flower, and he's just going to make pollen, okay? They've both been attracting a lot of bees this morning, but what we're going to do is we're going to help out the pollination process. We're going to pollinate our female by hand, so we're just going to take our male flower, we're going to pick it, and then we'll go through and take the petals off so that we just have our pollen in the center, almost like a wand. All right, so here it is. We've got our pollen ready to go. Now we're going to pollinate the female flower here. And there's a bee in there doing our work for us. So we're going to take our wand and we're just going to apply the pollen onto the female flower. All right, here we go. We're just going to gently tap the pollen on here so that we get some fertilization. If we don't get fertilization, then we don't get fruit. And you can see our bee was helping us out, but we'll try a little bit of it ourselves. All right. That should be pretty good. All right, and there we have our honeyboat squash. So it's nice and pollinated now. And I'd actually pollinated one of our squash earlier, a couple of weeks ago. As you can see now, it's doing really well. It is growing. It'll be ripe here in another probably 2 or 3 weeks. So it's about the size of the palm of my hand, okay? But these are supposed to be really sweet squash. They have the most sugar of any squash, more even than a butternut squash that you might get at the store. So I'm really excited to have this kind of squash that's growing, and it's looking to be really productive already, so that's a great news. We're hoping to get squash for the next, probably month or so. So that's our first sister, squash. Our second sister is corn. All right, corn is native to the Americas, as is squash. And it is a staple of the diet. Those of you who were in 6th grade with Amplify, remember 6th grade Amplify. Corn is one of the foods that you can feed to the sim. And what we can see going on here with our corn is we've got some more flowers. These are different kinds of flowers. Okay, this is the male flower. It produces the pollen. Female flowers haven't emerged yet. Normally you'll see them starting to poke up from between the leaves and the main stem. They're not up yet. Typically what happens, and this happens in squash as well, you get the male flowers first that start producing the pollen, and then the female flowers will show up later. All right. Now, one of the big differences between corn and squash is that corn is wind pollinated. It doesn't rely on bees and other insects to pollinate it. Will some pollination occur? Yeah, but normally what happens is you've got the male flower at the top, and it will produce pollen, and then the female flower will be below it. Okay, it'll produce these tassels that will catch the pollen. So as wind comes along and shakes the corn stalks, and you want to grow corn in a group like this, then you've got pollen that will fall down and pollinate the female flowers. So we should be getting some female flowers coming up in the next week or so. And this is exciting because this is popcorn, and we'll have some popcorn around December, maybe even into January for the new year. So that's our second sister, corn. Our last sister here in the garden is beans, and this is a really interesting kind of bean. It's called a field pea or cream pea. The variety here is Lady. And even though it's called pea, it's actually a bean. It's a legume, okay? And the great thing about it is it will actually return nitrogen to the soil. The roots of most legumes form symbiotic relationships with colonies of bacteria in the soil, and the bacteria in the soil can then capture nitrogen from the air and convert it chemically into a form that's more accessible for not only the bean plant, but other plants that might grow in the garden. And if we look carefully at our bean plant, we can see we've got some flowering with our beans too. So squash are flowering, our corn is flowering, and now our beans are flowering. And what's interesting about our beans is they don't really need a lot of help to get pollinated. They will self-pollinate, and when they do, they will start to produce a bean. And here's a baby bean coming up. Our cream peas are really good. We let them grow until they're dry, and then they're easy to find, easy to harvest, and then we cook them up. Last year we cooked them in an Instapot with a little ham and onions and carrots. Really good. Students loved it, so we're looking forward to having that again. These peas are the same species as black-eyed peas. They're a smaller variety. They're a little sweeter. They don't have as much of a strong taste as the black-eyed peas you'll get at the store, but they're really good. Students really liked them the last year, so we're growing them again. They can handle the Las Vegas heat really well. They're fast growing. We also planted these at the beginning of the year. It takes about 65 days for them to reach maturity. And then after that, the beans start to grow and appear, and you have a few weeks before the beans are ready to harvest. But we've got a nice big patch of cream peas here, and that is our third sister, legumes or beans. So one of the really cool things about Three Sisters is it's good for the health of the soil. So you've got your beans that are returning nitrogen to the soil. You've got corn that can provide shade for the squash, which likes a little bit of relief from the heat of the sun. And as far as nutritionally, this is a really great combination for humans to eat. Corn is really high in carbohydrates, and it's a good source of fiber. Squash has a lot of nutrients. It's really high in vitamin A. It's got vitamin C and other minerals. And beans are really high in protein and fiber. So if you eat the Three Sisters as a diet, it's really good for you. And Native peoples here in the Americas have lived on the Three Sisters for thousands of years. It's a great innovation. And we're growing them here in our school garden, and we're very happy that they grow so well because they're native, or at least the idea of Three Sisters is native. We've played around with corn so that it produces more of a popcorn. The squash, we have engaged in selective breeding as well to try and get a really sweet variety. They're both native to the Americas. There are lots of varieties of legumes all around the world. The black-eyed peas, the cream peas that we're growing in our garden, those are actually native to Africa, and they were brought over to the Americas as part of the slave trade. But they are delicious on their own. They're a great source of protein, and they do really well in the Las Vegas heat. So we've kind of got a blended three sisters. We've got 2 North American natives and an African transplant. So those of you in 7th grade who are studying the Columbian Exchange, this is an example of an exchange. We've got 2 natives and we've got an African transplant. So that's our garden update for today. Stay safe, guys. Eat some good food, and we will talk again later.